I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is the one and only Jacob Hester. Hester, let's start with. I'm tempted to start with your new office setup, which threw me for a loop a little bit here. You still got the jerseys up though, which is the ultimate flex that you can have. It truly is. It looks good for you. You guys are like doing a bunch of remodeling and stuff. I actually think it looks
We are.
perfectly fine. The background looks great.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're just kind of getting started, and you can see like there's a ladder and there's like tools all over behind me here. And it's a work in progress. So we had baby number 5 in June, and she was in the front room, and my office was just where I was doing off campus for 3 hours a day, and that's the only time I was spending in there. It's like, okay, we need to make this make sense. The office was in the back portion of the house. Again, we have 4 other children, 4 loud boys, and so at night it was like constantly like, hey, y'all be quiet. The baby's asleep up front. And so, yeah, we're like, hey, let's don't overthink this thing. Let's move dad. Let's kick him out of the office. Let's move him up to the front of the house. And so it's a little bit work in progress. I have the jerseys up. And of course, I had the flat screen TV up. That's the only things hanging in here so far. So we'll see if we can complete it by the time football season kicks off.
Hey, the fact that you have an entire wall of jerseys is, that's going to play anywhere. Defense travels, being able to hang your own jerseys, that travels in any office space whatsoever. So you're good there. Let's talk about your Bayou Bengals here. The LSU spring game. My biggest takeaway wasn't that LSU needs to work on its duck duck goose celebration, which it very much does.
Yeah, it does. It was a little rusty.
Yeah, it was rough. I watched that and I try not to be too glass half empty, but this new look, totally overhauled defensive staff, very much has its work cut out. How alarmed were you by some of the deja vu moments that we saw from that LSU defense on the back end?
Yeah, and so this is a conversation where I think the offense is going to be really good, but still that doesn't make up for having busted coverages and things like that. But it is a brand new staff, and even though Corey Raymond was at LSU for a long time, he's new to these players. Even though Blake Baker was at LSU not that long ago, he's new to I think everyone outside of Greg Penn, right at the linebacker position. Bo Davis, like he was an LSU coach when I was playing for LSU, but that's been a long time ago. Like he played at LSU just like Corey Raymond, but all of that was a long time ago. So even though they have strong LSU ties, they haven't been here with this current group of players. And so like you expect some of that. It's just for LSU fans, it's PTSD because you saw so much of that more than maybe any team in the country a year ago. Now, the staff before that, I don't really think had an excuse because that was year 2. Like you shouldn't have those issues. Communication issues should not happen. And it was a defense that was a top 40 defense the year before. It might have even been closer to 30 than it was 40. And it's like, wait a minute, what happened here? I mean, all the communication, whatever the chemistry was from that staff to the defensive personnel, it was completely gone. I've never really seen like a disconnect like that from a team that had, a solid defense. They made plays. They weren't the best in the country, but it wasn't something that you had to really worry about to maybe the worst of the teams that matter, right? The teams that matter, worst defense in the country. And so you had to do something, and you like it's like $10 million in salary. You're like, hey, we're not going to just replace the coordinator. We are cleaning house. We're starting over. We're hitting reset. And so when you do that, you're going to have some things like we saw last Saturday in the spring game. They just have to limit that from what it was a year ago. They don't have to be the 85 Bears. They don't have to be Georgia from 2021. They just need to be better. They just need to not be the worst. Like they can even be maybe even bad, Connor, and still be much better as a team. Like if you go from were they like 103 in defense last year, even if you go to like 60, and that's not the standard at LSU, but if you go from 103 to 60, then that's going to win you maybe a game or two. And so that's what they have to work on. They've got to get from where they were last year. They've got to shore some things up because yeah, it is worrisome and troublesome. And when you see kind of the same thing that happened a year ago that cost you maybe a chance to make a college football playoff with the best offense in the country.
Flirt with mediocrity. That's the way I always like to put it for
Yes.
teams. Just do that. Just give me that. Give me
Just don't
these
suck.
moments. Don't try not to suck.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's the old Cubs motto. When T Bob came on before spring, we both kind of agreed that the secondary actually looked like it wouldn't be as much of a concern as last year because those guys, even as bad as they were, they still got reps. You should get a healthy Isaiah
Yeah.
Alexander back. And you have a DC that actually speeds up quarterbacks with the way that he blitzes. So they should be put in better spots without having to defend for, 7, 8, 9 seconds out there. But I still believe all of those things. I just now look at that USC opener for an LSU program that hasn't won a season opening game since Joe Burrow was there. And
Yeah.
I think, oh God, Lincoln Riley, as my co-host Will Ogburn would always say, Lincoln Riley might have some other ideas for that LSU defense, and especially the way that spring game played out. Is that too much of an overreaction to already be looking ahead at that, going, "Oh boy, this group could be in for it early on"?
A couple of things. That game might be like the first one to 70 wins with some of the defensive performances we've seen from both of those
Yeah,
teams. And yeah, LSU's not been great in openers, right? And T-Bob and I have talked about it so many times on Off the Bench. It's like, man, I don't know where the disconnect is, because you get so much better as the season goes along, but that's 2 years in a row. And not even going back to Coach O in 2020, when you didn't adjust to Mike Leach running crossers over the middle of the field. You continue to try to play man against that and get picked off for an SEC record. Like, just not even going back that far, just going back to the last 2 years, it's been head scratching, because the first year, like, you didn't look ready out of the gates, and then once you got ready, it was too late. And then we all know how that game ended, with a blocked extra point. And then last year, you had so many opportunities in that game against Florida State early, and once you didn't capitalize, it's like, oh, you're not going to win this game. You had your chance, you had it early. I mean, like, your first offensive play, it's like, here we go, buckle up, and you didn't get touchdowns, right? You settled for field goals, and you never got back into that game. But right after that, you get back into the flow of things, and you became a good football team. But you can't start slow like that, not with this schedule. Like, I don't know what UCLA is going to be, but they've got Jimmy's and Joe's, and the last time that you played them, they big boyed you, right, in Pasadena. And so you can't start slow this year. And USC, I don't know what they're going to be defensively. It's kind of like LSU. I think they're going to be improved. I like that staff better than I like the staff that was there before. And so it's going to be a challenge, and it is going to be a game in which the offense makes a lot of plays. But for LSU to get where they want to get to, they've got to be better in these openers, and they got to go out there and really put their best foot forward, because you don't want to start behind the eight ball, knowing you still have UCLA on the schedule, knowing what you have in the SEC. You're picking up Oklahoma on your schedule. So this opener is going to be very important for Brian Kelly.
I think you see the way that Garrett Nussmeier played in the spring game, and that's obviously the positive. I don't think there's any question that Nuss is going to be the guy, even with AJ Swan on board, a guy who got significant reps at Vandy, was put in some tough spots there. But it's just about what it's going to look like week to week with Nuss. How do you believe that his first season as a starter is going to play out?
So he's like a unicorn, right? I mean, he's the guy that didn't transfer. He didn't leave. You never really heard anything from him. And every time he was asked to come into a game, he played well. But then he would just go back to his role. And again, he was quiet, would go out there, would work, would be the best teammate that he could be. So he is somebody that doesn't really exist in college football anymore. And you get excited about the flashes. Now, this will only be his second game ever to start. And that feels weird saying out loud, because like, he was there in 2021, and he was there with Max Johnson, and he's been there with TJ Finley. I mean, think how long that Garrett Nussmeier's been on this roster. And again, like, it feels like he started more games, but this will only be his second start. But you have seen, I think, enough of the flashes. And again, like, him going in there against that Georgia team in the SEC championship game, and you can say, well, that game was over. It was by the score, but remember, Kirby tried to score 50 in that game. He left his starters in. He wanted to make it a point, and I never blame anybody for something like that, but they were trying to win that game by as much as they possibly could. They had their starters in, and Garrett Nussmeier went up and down the field on that Georgia defense that nobody else had done that year. Like, those are things that get you excited as an LSU fan. You don't worry about the moment ever being too big for Garrett Nussmeier, which you would if it was a normal guy going into his second start in the SEC. I have never seen him ever be affected by anything. I remember, I guess it would have been 2021, and LSU is at Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is putting it on LSU, and there was a chance that he could get in the game. Max Johnson wasn't playing great, and I mean, he is just begging. He's literally begging the offensive staff, just put me in. I promise. These are his words. He's like, I promise you I can make a difference. He's just wanting to be out there on the field, and that's the kind of mentality that he has. From a skill set, he's got all the things that you have to have. I think some of the gunslinger stuff that's good is still there. I think some of the stuff that's bad has actually gone away for the most part. Will he still, try to throw across his body, I'm sure, at some point over the middle of the field and throw an interception? Yes. But I think what you get from the good side of his gunslinger part, you want to keep, and you don't want to take away too much from that.
What's the comp? Who's the guy that he reminds you of?
It's kind of tough just because, he's not 6'5". He's not this 6'5", 210 guy that can throw the football, push the football down the field. Gosh, I'm sitting here trying to think of a comp. I don't know. I don't really know because his body type, and then you see kind of the way that he throws the ball. Like the closest one that I can give you, like the first guy that popped into my brain was Baker Mayfield.
Hmm.
Because
Baker.
he's got a little Baker Mayfield. Now, I'm not saying that the arm is exactly the same, but I think he has more mobility than we're giving him credit for. I think Baker had that. I think Baker was more athletic than we gave him credit for. I think Garrett Nussmeier is that same guy. And there wasn't a throw that Garrett Nussmeier is scared to make, just like Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma. Like Baker was going to go out there and be Baker every single time. And so I see a little bit of that in Garrett Nussmeier. And maybe it's because, again, I'm letting the size play tricks on me, but that skill set compared to what Baker did at Oklahoma feels very similar.
We can put a pin in the comp. I do love comps. I think they're really interesting for quarterbacks, and especially one that, as you said, he's a unicorn. He's very unique in what he's trying to do. I think his approach is even somewhat unique. We'll see if that's tweaked. I thought we saw tweaks of his approach changing in the bowl game against Wisconsin, where I was like, wait a minute, this is a guy I've been calling a gunslinger for forever, and he's coming out and actually playing a pretty conservative game. You talk about the bad things that are kind of, maybe fading from his game as he matures. I think
Yeah.
at his best, you'd like to be able to, have a lot more of those games where he can just kind of manage it early on and then, get going late. What does a successful year 3 for Brian Kelly look like?
I think it's getting into the college football playoff. And I know it's lofty expectations, but Connor, you and I have talked about this. That should be the expectation every single year. At LSU, it should be. In the last 25 years, you've got the most championships outside of Alabama, right? You're the only other school outside of Alabama that has 3. Ohio State doesn't have that. Florida doesn't have that. Georgia doesn't even have that, right? I mean, great schools, great programs, and they're in good spots. Speaking of Georgia, obviously, but consistently, like you have been a team and you are a team that's won 3 national championships with 3 different head coaches. We talk about that in UConn basketball terms, like how impressive it was that they've done that. Well, she's done that in football. So the head coach matters without question. And BK is one of the best in the country, but also it's a program that if you do things the right way, like you can be highly successful. So I have no problem with the fans saying this should be the expectation. It's an expanded playoff. Year 3 is where you're graded the hardest. That's, Billy Napier conversation you and I had just yesterday. Like you're going to get graded off that year. And anytime these coaches are introduced, they always, say, let me get to year 3. Let me get my guys in here. And so year 3 is very important. Do you have deficiencies? You bet. But do you have a lot of talent coming back? The offensive line is the best in the country, in my opinion. If it's not, I will argue that with anybody. So it's in that conversation. And so you have some pieces that are playoff ready. Now, there's probably 2 or 3 other teams in the SEC that I feel like are right there with you, right? You're kind of similar teams, and how the schedule plays out and what you do in those tight games is going to matter. Who knows how many SEC teams we get in there? But LSU, I feel like, is going to be one of those teams that has the opportunity. I'm not talking about getting the 1 seed or the 2 seed. They're probably closer to 10, 11, 12, but they do have that opportunity, and that should be the expectation because you've kind of flirted with that a year ago. I mean, you're what, a spot away? Would you finish 13, 12, somewhere like that in the country? So you were close a year ago, and that should be the expectation for him this year.
In your totally unbiased opinion, as a former running back, fullback, back of all trades, really, I need your take on this tweet because it made me so mad, and I'm sure it'll fire you up even more. Josh Norris, who he covers the NFL, he pointed out the PFF stat that former Tennessee running back Jalen Wright had just 4 carries when facing 8+ in the box and just 5 total outside runs, which Josh Norris called Tennessee this a Mickey Mouse offense. I have a lot of thoughts on that, but what are your thoughts?
Um, I don't know his work, and so I'm not hating like on all of his work, but That tells me that somebody didn't watch a lot of film if he
He
calls that a
admitted
Mickey
that.
Mouse offense.
He
Okay.
admitted he doesn't
Okay.
watch college football in season and said it was a
Because
Mickey Mouse offense.
okay, let me tell you something. Everything is available in a Josh Heupel offense. They will run gap scheme as much as anybody. They'll run power, they'll run counter. Every run is up in that Tennessee offense. It might be out of 11 personnel, but they will run anything and everything. It's not just an inside zone team, right? It's not an outside zone team. Which, if you live in that world, that's fine. Like you can do that. You can be an 11. LSU was that last year. They had a quarterback that could pull it at any moment and go 80 yards. And so they were going to run inside zone. That's who they were. You barely saw any gap scheme from LSU. I think that changes this year, but that's who they were. That's not Tennessee. Tennessee will run everything. And like counter is going to be run in a Tennessee football game. So there's nothing Mickey Mouse about what Josh Heupel does in the run game.
How do you think your skill set would have translated to Heupel with all those inside runs like that?
Oh my gosh, I would have loved it. I would have loved it. I could run zone. Being able to read a defense was something I could do. Inside zone, obviously better than outside zone. But my God, I loved a power and a counter. I mean, that was what we lived by in Jimbo Fisher's offense when I was playing for him at LSU. And so, yeah, a little A gap to expand power. I could get behind that. And I mean, running it out of gun was actually one of my things that I preferred. It gave it more time to kind of open up and you to read your blocks. And so, yeah, I don't have any eligibility left, but if I did, I would like to see, what I could have done in an offense like that. We actually,
You
I mean, in '07 though, shout out to Gary Croton. We kind of opened it up, certainly in LSU terms, in 2007 terms, and we did some of that. And it was actually, pretty successful. At that time, that was the biggest offensive numbers LSU football had ever had.
different splits with the offensive linemen though than what Heupel's probably running. Like with how far
Yeah.
apart those guys are, I can't even like seeing you run through an offensive line like that. It just like I cannot actually picture it.
Our
It's
offensive
so
line
weird.
looked like they were on field goal protection. They were basically interlocked at the line of scrimmage.
It's like if you don't have seven guys on the offensive line, what are we really doing here? What do you think about the Heupel offense as it relates to skill players in the NFL draft? Is it overblown, or is it justify the conversations about skill players? Because I remember, this time
Yeah.
last year we're talking about Hooker, we're talking about Tillman and Hyatt and these guys, and it just kind of feels like that continues to follow Josh Heupel.
I think when people say that, they don't watch the NFL game. Or if they say that in the NFL game, maybe they're not watching what these guys are doing in college. The NFL is copying what is going on college offenses. Now, it might look a little bit different, and maybe it's even out of different personnels, but the schemes are the same. And some of these things that we see Josh Heupel do, like we did some of those things with Peyton Manning in Denver, some of these two-man route combinations, it's the same thing. So I don't really understand what the disconnect is. I mean, you're seeing NFL plays on the college field. Yeah, it might the splits might be wider, right? And the receiver might line up a little bit wider in college than he normally would. Like small things like that, but as far as like what the scheme is and what the two-man route combination is, it's the same thing. And again, the NFL is getting closer to college than college is getting to the NFL. I mean, a part of me, it pains me to say, when I was playing in the NFL, like 21 personnel with a fullback and a tight end was still very much a thing. We were going to dot the I a ton. Like that, we were going to do that. And every team, for the most part, when I got into the NFL, still did that. That was the, air quotes, pro style offense. And even if you didn't have a fullback in the game, you were in 12 personnel and there was going to be a tight end probably somewhere in the backfield. You were going to be under center. The NFL's not like that anymore. Like nobody really does that anymore. I mean, maybe Harbaugh tries to bring it to the Chargers because every free agent signing he's had has been like a Y tight end or a 230-pound running back. Maybe that's going to be what they do. But for the most part, the NFL offenses are doing the same exact thing. Maybe the alignment's just a little bit different.
Chargers are still going to draft Senate out of Kansas State. Like that guy just.
And I'll have a jersey. I'll buy the jersey. I mean, quit trying to make him a tight end. Okay. He was an all conference Big 12 fullback, not a tight end. Quit trying to steal all of our guys.
He is like I was looking at it this morning. Everywhere you look, he's getting that tight end moniker too. It's not like you see the fullback thing fading in a hurry. Everybody's saying, "Oh, look at his metrics compared to past tight ends." I'm like, I know somebody that's probably really upset with that. It doesn't
Yes.
like see that.
But tight ends don't want to block like that. They want to block in line on the line of scrimmage, which is great. That's what they do. when you get them off the line of scrimmage, I've never understood this because you're running like a zone extra where the fullback is reading it like he has the ball. And that's where he blocks. Like you can go all the way backside, you can stay front side, you find the gap and move the player out of the gap. That's what a zone extra is. And you're asking a tight end that's never played running back in his life to read it like a running back. A lot of fullbacks played at least high school running back. Some play college running back, and that guy's going to be able to read that much better. So, yeah, I never understood putting the tight end back there. And if you ever have my guy Randy McMichael on, Georgia legend, he will tell you as much. I could hear him groan from the sideline every time it was 12 personnel, and Randy was in the backfield in San Diego. He's like, why is Hester not in here doing this? I am here to be on the line of scrimmage playing tight end.
It's such a different skill set, it feels like. It really does. And if you could do both, I mean, more power to you. He certainly
Yeah.
feels like he's gonna have
If you can do both, yeah, because I'm not putting my hand in the dirt next to a tackle and blocking
Sure.
James Harrison. That's not
Sure.
going to go well for us either. So I have my skill set just like they have their skill set. And again, they hate lining up in the backfield to have to block it.
Okay, so besides Senate, besides the sixth Hester child, Cody Schrader,
Yes.
is there a running back in this draft class that you find yourself banging the drum for? Because I was reading Field Yates's top 100 prospects, and it's so light on running backs. Like the first
Yeah.
running back I saw in there, I think was Trey Benson at 60, and then Jonathan Brooks from Texas, he was at 64, Marshawn Lloyd at 82, and then the aforementioned Jalen Wright at 98. It just feels like the running back class is like there are years in which it gets watered down or it feels watered down
Yeah.
because of the positional value, but this year it feels like those top end guys just aren't necessarily there.
And we know what the running back position is. I mean, we've laid it out so many times before, and there's going to be a star out of this running back class that probably gets drafted somewhere like in the fourth round. He ends up becoming a starter. And it's wild, Connor. All 32 teams still play with a running back, even though they act like that none of the teams actually use the position. I mean, look at Pacheco and what he meant to the Chiefs. And so there's going to be a guy, and I understand, not drafting one in the top 10 because that hasn't really worked out for a lot of guys outside of Christian McCaffrey. So I get that. But there's still going to be guys that you count on that get second contracts and all of that. So I don't know who that's going to be. I'll tell you my favorite back and kind of a sleeper pick in this draft is somebody that you and I know well from his days in the SEC, and that's Dylan Johnson from Washington.
Yeah.
He is somebody that last year ran for 1,200 yards, 5 yards a pop. He's the best pass protector in this draft from the running back position. I really don't even think it's close. And that plays, as you know, in the NFL, that gets you on the field probably quicker than anything. Also, because he played in Mike Leach's offense for a majority of his career. He has in his career, 36, 65, 48, and 24 catches. He has a season which he had 65 catches at the running back position. And if you want to, again, get on the field as quick as you can in the NFL, because look, there's a lot of guys out there that can play on first and second down. The NFL is not looking for that anymore. They're not looking for the 235-pound bruising running back that can only run power. They want you to be able to do it all. And Dylan Johnson, he's 225 pounds. He's a big back, but he can pass protect. He's a willing blocker. And with that many catches, you're not going to find anybody else with numbers really even close, certainly from the Power 5 level with that amount of catches. I mean, 65, that's crazy. I mean, even like 36 his freshman year. That's a big number for back. I think the LSU record before Clyde broke it, I think Joe Adai had 39 because I had 37 one year. I know Joe Adai had 39, and then Clyde had like 50 something. That was the record by a running back. I mean, Dylan breaks that 3 times. I mean, so I think he's going to be somebody that probably goes in the 4th or 5th round, and nobody's going to talk about him. Whenever the draft grades come out, whatever team selects him, he's probably not even going to be a part of the process, right, wrong, or indifferent. They're not even going to have maybe a mention of him. But I'm telling you, he is going to play for a while. He'll be a vested veteran in the NFL. He's got a role in the NFL. You don't just average, 5 yards every year outside of your freshman year. And the teams that he's playing is a very much improved Pac-12. We know what the SEC is, have the catches like that, be able to pass protect like he does, and not have a role in the NFL. So not the first back off the board. Hell, Connor, he might be the 15th back off the board, but he is going to play at least for 4 years in the NFL and make an impact.
Yeah, if I'm one of those pass heavy teams, I'm looking at a guy like that. Absolutely. He would fit in so perfectly for a team. Even, maybe your beloved Chargers, like a team like that wants to be able to go after a guy that
Yeah.
you need to be able to protect Justin Herbert and do all those things would make a lot of sense. There's no way that we haven't done at least one draft story of yours in the past. I feel like we have at some point, but let's go back to that day, that weekend of you coming off the board at number 69. That was the year that they changed up the start time of day two of the draft. I went
Yeah.
back and looked this up. So things got rolling at like 9 a.m. on day
Yeah.
two, and you were the sixth player off the board on day two. So there's no way that you were hungover when you were drafted, right?
Um, Not before I was drafted, but after I was drafted, certainly. So my draft story is it started at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Okay. We thought it started at 9 a.m. Central time. And we were in
Oh,
my hometown of Shreveport. We were having a draft party because I didn't really know where I was going to get drafted. There was a slight chance maybe I could get to the back end of the second round, but it was going to be between probably like the third and fourth round. And so we were going to have like a little get together, whatever, and we're setting up for the party. Like we got there about an hour early and we got like helmets and different things and food or whatever. We're setting up and it's just me, my wife, her family, my family. And then all of a sudden, like they turn on the TVs and like, here we go, the third round is starting. We're like, oh man, we messed this up. Like we're an hour off here and there's nobody here but us. And then it's like, well, okay, well, maybe you won't get selected, in the third round. You're looking at the teams and you're like, nah, I didn't even talk to that team really. And so like we're continuing to set up, and all of a sudden, like my teammate, Shevis Jackson, goes to the Falcons. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a Braves fan. I was kind of eye hustling the TV, like, man, that'd be kind of cool if I went to the Falcons. Like Chipper Jones, we would be boys, I mean, we'd be hanging out. I'd be going to Turner Field watching the Bravos, and then it ends up being my teammate. So I'm fired up. I'm like, absolutely, let's go, Shevis. That's gonna be great for you. And so we're continuing to set up. And then the very next pick, that was 68. So 69, I see it flash across the screen. The San Diego Chargers have traded for the 69th pick. And I'm like, I went to San Diego. I talked to them a lot. That would be a great, I mean, like one of my only visits that I went on. And I know they were interested at the time. And I just had this feeling, and then I just start tapping my father-in-law who was sitting next to me. Like I couldn't get words out, like to try to tell them, hey, this could be me. I'm just like hitting his leg, and he's probably, what in the heck are you doing? And then before I even got the phone call, again, there's like 5, 6 people there because the party technically hadn't started yet. I see my name go across the screen before the phone actually rings, which
oh,
it's usually the complete opposite. I guess
yeah.
because they traded, and so maybe things move fast and got delayed or whatever. And so I see my name. Of course, I hear my mom and my wife and everybody kind of go crazy because there's like 70 TVs in this place. And so they all see it as well. And then I see the 619 on my phone and I'm like fumbling it, trying to answer it. And so I actually saw my name before I got the phone call. The party wasn't even there yet. But the best part about it, because I did get drafted before the party technically started, we started the party immediately then. And so when everybody got to the party, we had already pregame, we were hydrated up. And so we had a great time. And it felt like varsity blues because, again, this is like 9 in the morning at the time. The local news is like, hey, can we do an interview outside? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, sure. And this is like about like 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So again, we've been hydrating for a while. And man, I walk outside of this because it was like a bar. So I walk outside and it felt like varsity blues. I mean, the sun hits me right in the face. I'm looking, I'm like, where am I? What is going on? I have never seen the footage of that interview,
I need to find it.
and I don't even know if they aired it. It could have been awful, but we were deep in our cups whenever that interview took place, and so it lives out there somewhere, I think. Again, I've never seen it. I don't know if it aired, but it was a local news station on draft day, and I was having some fun because the pressure was already off.
Did you have one or two puka shell necklaces on?
Oh, that was post Puka Shell,
Oh yeah, because that's
because
'08, right? Yeah.
yeah, like
Okay.
I was married at the time, and Katie certainly would have shut the puka shells down at that point. But just know that they're always near and dear to my heart.
They're coming back, I hear. I'm just saying.
My youngest son plays travel baseball. A lot of puka shells out there on the diamond. I'm just saying. Hadn't seen the frosted tips yet. Maybe that's coming. Everything comes in waves. Maybe that's going to come afterwards. But I've seen the puka shells.
When Memphis is rocking puka shells and Hollister, I'm here for that. I'm
Yeah.
here for all that. That's incredible. You going off the board, by the way, 4 picks ahead of Jamal Charles is an unreal feat because that dude was nasty in college and he was nasty
Yeah.
in the NFL. You probably motivated him actually to become the player that he
Yeah.
became in college. Like
I say
Jacob
it
Hester
often.
came off the
Yeah.
board. Yeah, I would say
And
that to him.
look, he had like probably 9,000 more career yards than I had, but did he ever block a punt against me like I blocked one against him for a touchdown? No. So who's to say who won that draft pick?
Chargers get an A in that draft just by taking you, as far as I'm concerned. One last thing for you. Let's do a little draft prediction. Where does Jaden get picked? And please tell me the Bears go with Malik Neighbors at 9.
I don't know if Malik Neighbors is there at 9, then there's I guess 7 other teams because the Bears have 2 picks there that don't know ball like they should know ball. Malik Neighbors is the best receiver in this draft. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. is in this draft. He's a fantastic football player. He's going to play for a very, very long time and be very effective. Malik Neighbors is the best receiver in this draft. I have never seen somebody ever watching football have a plan like he has for when he catches the football. There is no waiting around. It is north and south, and he is making a guy miss. He's running over a guy. He's stiff arming someone. He is as explosive of a player that I've seen at the position. Man, I kind of get giddy talking about Malik Neighbors just watching that tape, and that is not LSU guy saying this. Trust me when I say that. That is just doing draft coverage for SiriusXM, doing the homework, getting ready to go to Detroit next week. He is the best receiver in this draft. So if he falls to you at 9, you pull your hamstring running that card up there to be able to select the Malik Neighbors. But as far as Jaden Daniels, I would be surprised if he doesn't go to. I think the Commanders are going to be right there. They're going to have every opportunity to select him. I think, look, Caleb Williams is Caleb Williams. I understand the Bears taking him at number 1, but I think the Commanders take Jaden at 2. Where would I want him to go? I'd want him to go to the Minnesota Vikings. I think that's the best case scenario. I think the Bears and the Vikings have really good setups for whichever quarterback they select. And they got veteran players, they got playmakers. Their offensive line is not, bad enough where it's going to be an issue. And so I hope he goes to the Vikings, but probably going to go to the Commanders.
God, you got me fired up. I'm gonna go watch some more Malik Neighbors highlights. I mean, this entire season was a highlight. Really, the last like season and a half was kind of just a highlight reel for him. But yeah.
Hey, the Cardinals can take Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that's a great pick. And then at 5, I think the Chargers need to select Malik Neighbors. That just makes all the sense. I said forget what I said about him being the best receiver in this class. It's Marvin Harrison Cardinals. You need to select him at 4.
LSU guy rocking a Chargers sweatshirt wants Malik Neighbors to go to 5 at to the Chargers. I'm stunned. Can't believe it.
Nope. Yeah, shocker. No bias here.
Jake, you're the best. Safe travels up to Detroit. We'll do this again soon, man.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate you.